Hello and welcome back. My name is Marta, and if you're new here, you're so welcome. If you're coming back, thank you so much. And today I am doing episode 2 of my new series, Worth the Wait. And if you didn't watch episode 1, I will link it so you can catch up. But basically this series is me going through my own books because I am moving at the end of the summer and I need to figure out what I'm doing because I started the series with 52 books and that's just too many for me to be bringing all the way back home to my parents. And so yeah, I'm going through my read and unread books and trying to figure out what is worth the weight in my suitcase. I need to get serious about unhauling. If you watched episode 1, you know, didn't really make much of a dent. So I'm gonna start by looking at my read books because I feel like that's way easier to decide. If you've read the book, you know how you feel about it. It's easier to decide if you want to keep it or not. But when you haven't read it yet, there's all those like imagined possibilities of how much you might love it. So it can be quite harder. I will show you now, just a reminder, or if you didn't watch the first episode, what the state of my shelf is like. I've books but in alphabetical order, unread, and then 2 piles of read books. So let's grab one of those piles. I showed you this pile in episode 1. I read all of these books. Let me hold them up. I read all of these for my Literature of North America class during my master's. They're all annotated, which is cool. So let me put them down. So let's go through them. First up, I have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This I had read before. It was a reread during this class and it is a really good book. I mean, it is a bit of a modern classic at this point. And I had to, the first time I read it from the library. So I wanted to have physical copies for most of the books in this class just because it is much easier to keep track of quotes, and I needed to write an essay at the end, so it was just much easier. But this book I've already reread. I feel like I might reread again, but it is more of a question of, do I need a copy of this modern classic in my bookshelf? I feel like it feels like so much has been said and discussed with this book. But I feel like I read it from the library the first time. It'd be easy to find a copy anywhere at any time. And even though I think it is a good book, it's not one of my all-time favorites or anything. So yeah, this copy is actually a bit strange. It's one of the vintage books. And the print, I don't know if you can tell, but it is so big. Not that I have anything against that, that's cool. But I think I just feel okay just not having this. Next up, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This was really interesting to read in class because it is historical fiction, but it isn't plain historical fiction, let's say, because it takes the concept of the Underground Railroad, of this network of people who were trying to help people escape from slavery, and turns it into an actual railroad, so a network of trains that had this same purpose. So it brings up this extra like fictional element. This is a really interesting book because it brought up a lot of discussion about what is expected of historical fiction and how much do we trust or do we expect writers of historical fiction to be extremely accurate in their stories, and how much liberty they can take without making the reader aware. Like, there are some instances in this book where there are certain things that are like anachronistic, things that really happened but that didn't happen in the time period where this book takes place. But it's just interesting to think, does the author expect us to know that or to do our own research, and how much is it the author's job to make sure that we don't take things as real that didn't actually happen, or that didn't happen that way, and how we use things that are like fictional, like fully fictional or anachronistic, to convey the emotions and the ideas that the author is trying to convey. I think that was just really worthwhile to have other people to bounce off of these ideas and be able to discuss. Ultimately though, this book, the structure of it, it moves between, follows this one main character, Cora, but it jumps between, can you see? That's kind of hard. It jumps between the places that she's traveling through and alternate character perspectives, if that makes sense. So there's like, she's in this place and then another character's perspectives, and then she's in the next place and then a different character's perspective. And I feel like that, even though it gives you a bigger picture of the overall landscape that this is happening in, to me it kind of broke up the story a bit too much, or I don't know if I would have just liked to stay with her a bit more. But this is another one that was a good read. I'm just not necessarily expecting to reread it. I feel like reread potential is one of the main things that helps me decide if I want to keep a book in my collection or not after I've read it. I know some people just want to have a shelf that is full of the things that they've read, but for me, I feel like I'm not necessarily attached to every single book I've read. Even books that I've liked, I don't feel the need to just have them sitting there. I think every book I have pretty much fulfills the category of like being one of my favorites, and a book that I've had a big emotional response to, and I see myself rereading one day. Or I do have other books that aren't my favorites, but they take a lot of real estate in my head, like books that I, maybe because of the themes that they touch on, or because of a specific thing they did, they keep cropping up in other discussions, and I just think about them often enough that I just want to have them there. I'm curious as to how it is for other people, because of course I have the reference of other people who I watch on booktube and what their like unhaul policy is, but I wonder what other people who don't have big collections, like I don't consider myself as someone who has a huge book collection, I just wonder how people decide, or what helps them decide. And I guess that's kind of one of the points of this series, but let's continue. Next up is the submission by Amy Waldman. This was a really lucky find because I found it in a charity shop, and I don't know if it just hasn't been printed in a while, but apparently it is really hard to find. I feel like because this also wasn't one of my favorites, pretty much after reading it, because I know how hard it is to find, I wanted to donate it to the university library in case it gets put on a reading list next year. This book happens in the aftermath of 9/11, and there's this group of people who are trying to decide on a design for the memorial, and once they get to the last two designs that they're picking between, the one that they decide to go for is by a Muslim architect who designed it. And so this creates a lot of debate and drama and a lot of different emotions, and it follows several people in this group who have had different experiences in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, and who are deciding what to do and what the public opinion will be, etc. I feel like this one was one of the more obscure picks in those, because I was familiar with most writers, if not books, but I hadn't heard of this before. The author of this book is a journalist who was around reporting during 9/11, or in the aftermath, I guess, and you can really tell in the writing style that this has, like, even though it is fiction, it has a journalistic approach in like bringing in the different perspectives and testimonies and so on. But yeah, again, I've said I kind of had already made my decision on this, but I just haven't actually taken it to the library yet. So that's where this one's going. Next, this was one of my bigger surprises and one of my favorite books in this class. This is My Year of Meat by Ruth Ozeki. Might be familiar with Ruth Ozeki because of A Tale for the Time Being or The Book of Form and Emptiness, which I think was nominated for the Women's Prize in the past few years. This is her debut, and it is a novel of two sides. This is one of the books that I wrote my final essay for this class on, and it follows this Japanese American woman who works in television and this Japanese housewife, and they become connected because of this documentary series that Jane, the Japanese American woman, is producing for a Japanese TV station. And basically the aim of this docuseries is to sell more beef in Japan. The pitch for this did not make me want to pick it up, but I feel like it has all the makings of a great debut novel. And I haven't read any other Ruth Ozeki yet, but I see, if this was her first, I see so much potential for all of her other books, and I know some of them are really beloved. I mean, I just mentioned one being up for a big prize, but yeah, I feel like this one I might potentially want to reread. So this one I think I might keep. I feel like it's also like all the covers for this book, if you look it up, or maybe I'll put some on the screen, but I feel like all the covers for this book have such like fun art on them. And yeah, this is I feel like, as I was saying with the last book being a more obscure pick, I feel like for Ruth Ozeki this is a bit more obscure because it's her first book. I do recommend, if you're a fan of her work, to go back to this and see how it compares to more newer novels by her, because I thought it was really good. This was another good book, surprise. There follows a group of Indigenous people who live in the city, Oakland. They live in Oakland, and they are connected in various different ways, and the book kind of presents them and it starts establishing all their lives and their relation to their native identities, and it slowly moves towards this big powwow that in one way or another they're all gonna end up in. The ending of this book, I don't want to spoil it necessarily, but the ending of this book was, I don't even know what to say about it without telling you what happens. But I feel like this book has a kind of slow build and it lets you get to know all the characters, and as it moves toward the ending it starts kind of ramping up and you start to see how this might develop, how the ending might happen. And it is a really tough read toward the end. It was really interesting in part because it portrays Native people in cities, which I feel like there is a move of Indigenous authors wanting to portray a much more multifaceted view of Native people, Indigenous peoples, and kind of move away from this very localized like reservation Indigenous story, and kind of speak of Indigenous peoples as existing modern, like current, because I feel like sometimes they are spoken of as a thing of the past. So yeah, this book I enjoyed. I don't know if I could bring myself to reread it now that I know how it ends, but a friend read this, enjoyed it, and said he'd be happy to keep my copy. So next up is my favorite book from this pile, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This had been on my list for, like, on my TBR for years at this point, and I made a point to buy the US Canada edition because I like it a lot more than the European one. And I'm so glad. It is so nice when you have big expectations for a book and the book delivers. This was exactly the type of dystopian story that I want to be reading. A story that uses dystopia, the end of the world, different changed societies and harsh conditions to speak about humanity, about community, about what really matters and what is worth, bringing back from the end of the world. And if you don't know, Station 11 is a pandemic book, a pandemic that wipes most of the population on Earth, and it follows just the moment when the pandemic is breaking out and 20 years later, where this group of actors, they're like a nomadic caravan of actors who put on mostly Shakespeare plays. And yeah, it is a meditation on all these topics I was saying, but also about art, and it was really good. And I know a lot of people have read it by now, but again, it's just such a nice feeling when a book that you expect to love is as good as you imagined. This one, I mean, if you haven't guessed, I'm keeping. And finally, these were in a random order. This is Jeffrey Eugenides's Divergent Suicides. This book is another one, it's the second one that I had read before this class, and so it was a reread for me. And this one I am extra glad that I was made to reread, because the first time I read it, I didn't really like it. If you don't know, this book follows this family that has 5 daughters, the Lisbon sisters, and the group of boys in their neighborhood. The Lisbon sisters, one by one, take their own lives, and the book is narrated from the perspective of these neighborhood boys. When I first read this book, I was like, why am I having to listen to these boys kind of like observe from the distance and idealize and speak on these young girls in this way? I'm uncomfortable and I don't like it. And not that all of that isn't true, but reading this book, getting more context on the different kind of like devices at play and like the gothic elements and the way that the author is offering up like a critique in a way, I just feel like I needed more context. I had read this book, I don't know when, but a good few years ago, and I just feel like I was missing a bit of the point, if that makes sense. Also, again, made the choice to like pick the edition I liked the best, because I was like, if I'm actually getting a copy of all of these books, I mean, most of them I got used. I think all of them but Station 11 I got used. Love secondhand books. But this one, it was secondhand but the nice copy. And this I find is a similar situation to The Handmaid's Tale, where I had already read them but I didn't own them. I read both of them from the library. And they are modern classics. I think literally this is the Collins Modern Classics. It is more of a question of, do I need to own these modern classics if I just read them from the library the first time? I think I'm more inclined to keep this one. I mean, yes, I'm shallow because of the edition, but also what I was saying earlier on about, I feel like this is more like food for thought for me. But to be honest, even the second time, with all these contexts and new questions and discussions surrounding the book, it still wasn't an amazing like reading experience for me. So I could probably also unhaul it. For now, it's going on the maybe pile. So let me see. I don't think I said we started the episode on 50 books. Down to 46. 1 maybe, 2 keep. Amazing. So here is my unhaul pile. So that's where these 4 books will go. I will have to get rid of the tabs before I donate them, but here they are. Okay. This is my red books that are not for class, just my normal red books. Let me move them out. Okay. Let's start. I'll just tell you stuff that I'm keeping. No non-negotiables. I talked in the first episode about Intermezzo. Signed. Annotated. I'm keeping it. Then Sunrise on the Reaping. I mean, was it my wisest choice to buy a new hardcover book, knowing that, you know, I needed to take it away eventually? No, but it's fine. I have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in the matching edition at home, and the original trilogy, and I love The Hunger Games so much. There's no way I don't keep this. Okay, what else? I have this tiny book. This is The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Robin Wall Kimmerer is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which is one of my favourite non-fiction books of all time, about botany and science and indigenous wisdom, and it's really good. And this one is her newest. It is tiny, so, you know, I wish it was longer. This book I want to keep, but one of the reasons for me to keep this book is that I want to pass it around. I want my friends to read it. So yeah, it is really, it's like a tiny beautiful little book. The Service Berry is about, well, an economy of gifts and abundance, and in it Robin talks about how even though we live in a capitalistic society and we can't really ignore or completely remove ourselves from these systems, how can we find kind of pockets and moments to move toward this economy of the gift, which is an idea of an economy that's much more sustainable for ourselves and for the planet, that moves in a system of abundance rather than scarcity. Because I feel like in a lot of ways that's what a lot of us are trying to do, knowing that we can't completely remove ourselves from the systems in which we exist. We're trying to find moments and these like kind of like safe pockets in which we can move toward more intentional lives that align more with our values or that are more sustainable. So yeah, this was a nice meditation on some of these ideas. I'm keeping it. I'm telling all my friends to read it. Next I have Un Mal Nombre, which is the story of a new name, the second book in the Neapolitan Quartet by Elena Ferrante. I've read this book already and I have it here because I want to reread it and continue with the series. I haven't reread it yet. But I'm keeping it. I've read the first 2 and I love Ferrante's writing so much. And this is, yeah, I should have reread it because I had it here, but now the rest of these I don't have as strong opinions on. I think I'm probably gonna keep Lena's poetry collection. This is Bargain Bin Rom-Com. Tiny book. I feel like it's so easy to justify keeping it, and it has some poems that I really love. Let me read you one. No one asks for this. What's one of my favorites here? Maybe 2.0 is actually my favorite, or one of. This is a poem that Lena wrote for her grandmother, who was also named Kathleen Normington. We have never met, but I have your name, first and last, your round features, your metabolism. I wish I could show you all the ways I get to be a person now. That this Kathleen gets hopes and dreams and a chance to own herself. That we get a voice in the next round. That the world gets kinder when the second edition comes out. Lovely. This is Wicked by Sarah Shepherd, which is part of the Pretty Little Liars series. We talked about this in the first episode of Worth the Wait. And I was like, I'm just going to put it in the maybe pile. Now, it's been a couple of weeks. I've made my peace. And I've been thinking about how this is a 16 book series that I was saying how oh, I kind of want to collect it because the covers look so fun. You know what a 16 book series that I would like to collect is? The Realm of the Elderlings. This, I feel like comparing those two in my head just because they're both 16 books made me realize I don't need this. It's fine. They're fun. I don't think I'd want to reread them. Yes, the covers are campy and ridiculous, but it's fine. So, another one down. I feel like these three, I told you I needed to unhaul. This is a romance fantasy, the second one in a series, one of those companion romance series where each book follows a different couple. This is a really vibey romance series that happens in this small town that has all the witchy, kind of cozy vibes. And this one was of rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers. They are good fun. I like the modern witches setting. They're like, I feel like it's something that I keep finding in different books and it just works for me. But I'm not especially attached to this couple specifically. I started reading the series because in book 1, which is Payback's a Witch, the couple is a bird. The couple is 2 women, so I was drawn into it because of that. And now I'm just happy to kind of keep reading them here and there. But I don't need to own them. I found this secondhand, that's why I own it. Next, I have Lessons in Chemistry, which is a book I read this year. I quite enjoyed. The thing is, I never touched this copy because I got the audiobook from the library. Shout out to the library. And it's a really good audiobook and I really enjoyed the narrator. And I was thinking, it's a book I might want to reread, but I was happy with the audiobook, so I would just be happy to listen to that again. So it just feels, it doesn't happen often to me that I read a book without touching my copy of it because it seems kind of silly. But now I'm like, it was a good book. Also, this is a silly reason, or maybe a silly extra reason, but all of these books, the idea is I'm deciding if I bring them back to my parents or not. My sister owns a copy of this book, so I feel like one copy in the house is enough. Next is Mrs. March by Virginia Feito. I feel like she is Spanish, even though the book was written in English, so I should say her name in Spanish. Anyway, this is like a mystery, mild thriller book. It was good. I enjoyed it. But I feel like as is often the case with mystery thrillers, it was good, but I just don't have super strong feelings about it. It is about this woman, Mrs. March, who lives it feels like a very controlled, very polished life. She's the wife of a novelist and her husband's new book comes out and people start talking to her or like mentioning to her that there's a character in it that's based on her, but it doesn't paint her in a really flattering light, really. And slowly from that, like, she's really humiliated by that, and it's kind of like descent into madness kind of thing, or you're not really sure, are things really happening to her? Like, is someone doing this to her, or is she like imagining things happening? And again, it was good. It just didn't have a really strong impact, so it can go. I finished this between the first episode and now, and it was kind of, at the start I was really enjoying the writing style. I was really curious about where this book might go. It's about, well, this is Mr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore by Robin Sloan, and it starts with this man who loses his job, finds a job in this like really strange bookstore where it has a massive backlist of strange books, and people don't really seem to be buying them. They seem to be borrowing them from the back. So how is this bookstore open if it doesn't really have like normal business? I feel like I was really intrigued by all of that, but then the direction that it goes in wasn't my favorite. or like the explanation for what's happening, I was like, oh, okay. And it also has a kind of relationship where, like, not really a romance, but the main character has a crush on someone and they date, and just the way that this love interest was written, she was giving a lot of, like, you know, manic pixie dream girl energy, which I wasn't a fan of. But then it kind of, the end of it, or how it wraps up, kind of got me again, and I was like, oh, this is a really nice, like, this is a really cool story about, like, books about books, and, you know, books about book lovers, which I feel like is something that people who really love books always love as an element, obviously. I don't know if it's enough to justify keeping it. Something else, which is again kind of a shallow reason, is that this is an American edition of the book, and it is so perfectly floppy. Like, give me a floppy book over, like, I don't know, like a really stiff, like, European one, like, you know what I'm talking about. You're watching this video, you know what I'm talking about, probably. But yeah, so maybe pile. I'm keeping these, and I'm getting rid of these 4. Well done me. Let me update the counter, because I don't know right now. So we have the updated unhaul pile, and here the keep pile, and the 2 maybes on the right. Let's just good progress. So I've been editing this episode and I hadn't realized how much I had to say and I said about all of these books. So I'm gonna end this one here, and I'm gonna make a 3rd and, like, final episode to wrap it up. Thank you very much for being here. I am very impressed if you made it to the end, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.